Hey you guys, Charlie here. Welcome back to Conquering Kerbal Space Program. I'm making a few modifications to our Scimitar SSTO here because the payload we're bringing today is a bit, it's just a bit weird. All the weight is all to one side of it, so it's not balanced at all. It's about 42.5 tons, and 40 tons of it is all the way at the very end of one of the ends. So getting it up into orbit is a little bit trickier than I was expecting, and I had to make a few modifications and trick things out. And what I ended up doing is putting a claw on the front, but I couldn't mount the payload to the claw directly. It wouldn't allow me to do that. So I put a stack separator on the claw and then put the payload on the stack separator. So we'll have to get rid of that separator. But you can kind of see the payload there really quickly. It is essentially another structural element. And then we have some stuff that's sort of preparing us for our science experiments, or some of our science equipment that we're gonna have to bring up later. Very large science equipment. And then there's these orange tanks in the very end, and that is 40 tons. These orange tanks right there are 40 tons. It's food for animals that we're gonna have in space. Some of our science experiments revolve around having animals in space, and we are gonna bring a bunch of food up for them, so I don't have to deal with it later. So that's pretty much what that is. It's kibble, and yeah, I don't know if it's too much kibble. It's probably way too much kibble, but I'm gonna have it anyway. And the part that made it more challenging is because if I dock it to the docking port in the back of the plane, and the reason why the docking port is in the back of the plane is because if I'm gonna mount payloads in my cargo bay, the idea is I want the cargo to be as far back as possible so that it doesn't make my front end too heavy to lift off. But the problem is that kibble doesn't really have a docking port on the end of it, so I can't dock it. So I have to dock the other end, which means the kibble, the 40 tons of the payload, is all the way to the front. And as a result, my center of mass gets pushed way too far forward, my nose is way too heavy, and I don't even get off the ground. So that's sort of my solution for that. Am I bringing too much kibble? Probably. You guys in the comments are probably going to let me know that. You're pretty good at letting me know when I don't do something right. But we have a different Ascent profile this time. Because the payload is about 20-something tons heavier than the first flight we did in the last video, which, by the way, thank you so much for watching that. Like, I mean, I know you guys are like watching the videos, and it's like, thank you for watching the videos, but I do. But that video, the views on that video have grown faster. Like, there's more first day views on that video than I've had in a very long time, and it's still getting quite a bit of views. It'll probably be, at least as far as I can tell anyway, it'll likely end up being my most viewed video of the series so far. So pretty excited. You guys are liking the SSTOs. That's good. Hopefully you like this one too. It's not quite as revealing because you've already seen the plane before, but it's still there. But we had a different Ascent profile this time because the plane is heavier. I got myself up, same about 20 degree incline, 15 degree incline, got myself up to about 13 to 14K. I think it might have been a little bit lower than that, but essentially I watched the thrust on the engines, and when the thrust reaches about 990 kilonewtons, I know that that's about maxed out to what it's going to do, and so I nose down and I kind of fly flat. I don't really go up. I'm still kind of going up, but I'm not going up very fast at all. I might be raising myself up at like maybe a couple of meters per second. It's really slow. But the goal there was to get as much horizontal velocity as possible, to get as much speed as possible while the engines were still working at their maximum push, and then nose back up. So I did end up getting a very good orbit. I ended up getting a very good ascent. I still have 2 Kerbals with me, and it's mostly because I didn't know if I'd need Bill to disassemble anything for this. I don't end up needing to do it, and I'm actually thinking about sort of reconfiguring how this plane is built and maybe building an unmanned version of it, which has a completely different nose. It doesn't need a cockpit if it's completely unmanned, because we do have this drone core in there. And to offset the energy usage, before anyone asks, you may not have noticed it when I was playing around the plane. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but there's a lot more battery power in the plane now. I don't have to worry about electric charge hardly at all now, so that's going to be a good thing. But because I don't necessarily need crew to bring stuff up, I am thinking of refitting this plane to be an unmanned vessel with more of like a fuel tank in the front instead. If I can find a balance to where I can have a bunch of fuel in the nose of the plane, but yet still have it light enough to lift off and be good, if I can find that balance, I'll use it, because it would be nice to have more fuel. more rocket fuel or more liquid fuel. It doesn't really, either one is be fine. It'd be nice to have more weight in the front of the plane, especially when it comes to descent later, which I'll talk about in a minute. So we've got ourselves basically rendezvoused with the station here, and this is all sped up a lot. The frame rate is atrocious here. I'm currently looking at the clip, and this particular clip right here is sped up 500%. So all this rotation you're seeing right here, think of this rotation and all the movement as being like a fifth of this speed, and that's the speed I'm playing with. And I'll routinely, a couple of times throughout the video here, I'm actually going to slow it down to real time so you can see what I've been dealing with. But it's pretty bad. We're getting a lot of parts here, unfortunately, and there's a lot more parts to go. So I'm kind of worried about the part count making this station not really feasible with the physics load. So this is the first usage of our tug, or first real usage of our tug anyway, the first purpose of our tug. And I'm going to, I was going to try and bring the whole thing, but I'm thinking about it as I'm approaching the station, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to have to separate these, because 40 tons on one end, and then the rest of the 2.5 tons is whatever's left. It's not the orange tanks. I mean, that's going to be kind of hard for the tug to grab and like actually maneuver and balance. So what I've decided to do is grab the 40 tons of cargo first, decouple it, and move that separately. I can't target this because there's no docking port, so I've gone ahead and I've just sort of targeted the docking port that's right there to the right, and then I just lined myself up to where I was going to go just left of that port. And when I get close enough, I can kind of eyeball it. Now I've got these engines that are in the center of this tug, and the reason why I brought these engines or installed these engines was because this tug might have to haul heavy things. In this case, 40 tons. It may have to haul heavy things, and RCS is going to be really inefficient with really heavy things. So I've got some fuel and I've got these rocket engines, and that is going to help me push things a little more reasonably because I get a little bit more push out of it, which is great. So that's why I installed those engines. There's two sets, ones that face to the back and ones that face to the front, so that I can control both forward and back without having to rotate the craft. That's the entire purpose. I really like this tug. I'm a big fan of this design. I just am. So docking to the station with this is actually very difficult, and I'm finding it more difficult than I thought it would be. The plan was to get velocity towards the station, then as I'm moving towards the station, adjust my sideways movement so that it would line up the docking port that's on the side here with the docking port that's right there. And that's a little bit more challenging than I thought it would be, and this is all sped up footage, so this is actually a very, very slow process. I'm moving incredibly slow here. But it turns out to be just a little harder than I thought, and I end up ramming the station with 40 tons of cargo. Thankfully, only at 0.5 meters per second of speed. But I'm having a difficult time, even with the RCS ports that I have and just moving it around, having a really difficult time getting these ports to line up. And yeah, trying to dock when you're not balanced, and not when your pivot point, if you will, is not in the center of your craft, and the direction that you're heading and your thrusters are pushing you is not lined up with where you're trying to control from. That's a challenging bit in space, and I definitely have not mastered it. But I did have to like collect myself and say, okay, that plan didn't work. What's the next plan? And then I thought, you know what? Why don't we just zero out our velocity so we're not moving anywhere? Then we'll move towards the port sideways. We'll get ourselves a quick little rotation, get ourselves pointed to it's kind of the orientation we need to be in order to dock, and then we will slowly approach from the side, ever so slightly moving towards the port. And basically I'm trying to dock, instead of coming right at it from the front, I'm going to come at it from the side and try to slow it down just as the ports line up. And I'm hoping that that's going to kind of fix things. Again, this is sped up, so look how slow this is going, right? In reality, it's going this slow. This is real time now. I've slowed the clip down to 1 times speed. This is what I've been dealing with playing this whole time. Ever since about 2 kilometers away from the station, I've been dealing with this. So yeah, this right here is basically evidence that any video that involves the space station in any way is probably going to have to be a post-commentary video. I'll speed it up for you. Probably going to have to be post-commentary on any video that involves the station because, well, yeah, you can see it. It's really, really slow. Let's slow it down again. So this is me being very, very close. The tank is kind of in the way, so I'm getting it really low. And then once I see these two ports are basically right on top of each other, I'm going to shut off RCS and shut off the SAS. And that means the ports and the magnification, or if you will, not magnification, the magnets, okay? I can't speak. I've been speaking all day. I can't think of the words. But anyway, the magnets, let them take control, let it pull it in, and that's going to be good. So we have a successful dock of the heaviest part. So I would think that the next part is easier because it's a lot lighter of a load, and again, the frame rate. So let's speed ahead a little bit here, and I'm trying to dock to this, and I said, you know what, this is probably the center of mass here. Well, it turns out the claw cannot grab a hold of these inflatable parts, which I guess makes sense. You wouldn't want the claw to pierce the inflatable parts. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just grab this docking port here. So I move up to the docking port, and it doesn't grab. I'm like, okay, maybe there's something bugged with the claw. Let's disarm it and rearm it. We'll try it again, and I ram it, and it doesn't grab. I even get it up to like 2 meters per second on the impact, and it doesn't grab. So I'm like, okay, well, where can I grab this thing? I can't grab it there, I can't grab it there. I guess I'll try it like right here, and boom, it works. So trying to figure out where it's going to grab was the problem. Now, you saw an explosion there. That is the stack separator. I did not reduce the force, the ejection force of the separator. And as a result, it just slams into the body of the plane and explodes. Only the separator was damaged there. Nothing else was damaged. It's just the separator, so that explosion is fine. I don't care. So I had to kind of... I'm not grabbing it by the center of mass, so there is also a problem here where every time I push forward, I end up turning a little bit and I have to correct. So I frequently turn on and off the RCS because I want to be able to push it in the direction I want, but when I adjust my rotation, I don't want the RCS on to adjust the rotation. So I turn the RCS off, use the reaction wheels to adjust the rotation and line things up where I want, and then use the RCS to push forward. And then I thought, you know what? It worked so well going sideways with the big payload, the heavy payloads, I'll just do it with this one too. And as I'm approaching it, I noticed that it's actually not in the orientation that I want. I want the little docking port that's there on the top. I want that facing up. And so I have to actually adjust my entire approach here to where my tug is on top instead of on the side, which isn't really that big of an adjustment, but it does mean that I don't get to see any of my indicators in the nav ball. I have to pretty much eyeball it completely because I'm just not facing the thing anymore. So as I get close to it, I can make minor adjustments. Again, I'm down to real time, so you can see the frame rate I'm working with here, and it's actually working out okay. I get the port pretty dang close, and as soon as I see the light start to flicker, I go, okay, they see each other, the magnets are working. I disengage the RCS and the SAS so that the magnets can do their thing, and it just doesn't quite dock, and the whole thing starts to rotate, and the other end is kind of moving there, and I'm like, uh-oh. So I start to kind of try to suggest that it rotate back. I start using the reaction wheels a little bit on the tug, just trying to pull it back, and I was able to pull it back enough to where it docks. So we have two big arms of the modules connected to the space station. A lot of stuff left to bring out, guys. There's probably another, I don't know, maybe 100 and I think there's like another 120 parts to bring out to the station, 130 parts or something like that to bring out to the station. So anyway, the last, at least that's what I got in my design so far. The last step here is to just get this tug secured and get it back on the station. I don't have a permanent resting place for the tug yet because those fuel tanks are at the bottom there. And I can't disassemble those fuel tanks and stuff like I want because it's my only source of solar power. So I am going to have to start probably building near this module that we're working with kind of in the back here like you see. I'm going to have to start working with this, or I'm going to have to bring up the solar panel modules soon, which is not going to happen right away because I haven't unlocked the solar panels I want to use for the station yet, because they're massive. They do a lot of power per second, and they're massive, which is good because I don't want to have to use like 10 little solar panels. I'd rather use one giant one. So that's what I'm going to do. And so that's pretty much it. We got the modules on the station. The tug is secured. Everything is looking good. Let's close the cargo bay and get our plane back. Get our plane back to Kerbin and get ourselves get our flight, I guess, adjusted so that we can re-enter. Which, if you remember from the last video, this is the hard part. This is the part that I was not very good at, and I want to say that I learned a lot from reading comments in YouTube, but I did. I learned a little. I didn't learn a lot. I did learn a little, and I had a couple of you guys made some good suggestions about, you know, kind of the angle of attack that I should employ when I'm entering towards Kerbin. So I tried to kind of get that, you know, try to employ that, I guess you could say, so that I could maybe do this successfully. The first thing I did is I get my altitude down to basically as low as I can possibly go without being in the atmosphere. I basically get my periapsis, I think, was 70,200, and my apoapsis was like 70,400 or 500 or something. I'm not at that point in the video yet, but you'll see it in the upper side, in the upper part of the screen. You'll be able to see what my periapsis and apoapsis are eventually. But even with that done, and with those burns all set and ready to rock, yep, see, there you go. We're ready to enter the atmosphere, and as soon as I get my burn all set, and as soon as I get the, I guess, angle that I need to be in, or the approach that I need to be, I perform one last burn that puts my periapsis at about 42 kilometers. Again, this is just going off of recommendations from you guys on YouTube. And then I get my nose pointed up in the proper orientation first, and get my nose pointed up really, really high. Now, the sun shows its face really quick, and I'm like, I'm not that far into the atmosphere. Let's extend these panels and refill our batteries really quick. So I did. That didn't seem to bother any panel at all, so that's good. We're pretty high in the atmosphere still. So I have my nose really high up in the air, and this is supposed to be slowing me down as much as possible. I don't know if I'm pointing high enough, but I have this constant worry that if I point too high, I'm just going to flip over and I'm not going to be able to correct it. So I'm constantly thinking to myself, all right, let's not go anywhere near like more than 60 degrees. Let's keep it something where I have at least some hope of recovering if it happens. So as I descend, the wings start to get hot, the control surfaces start to get hot. It's a pretty common thing. I have heat-resistant parts. Somebody said make sure you have heat-resistant parts. The Mk4 spaceplane system is a lifting body that is built for re-entry. It is an entire pack of parts that is specifically designed for an SSTO. So the body of the plane, the cockpit, all of those things, I don't need to like apply some heavy heat shield. It comes with all that stuff included. The part that doesn't necessarily, I'm not really sure about, are the wing parts, but these are B9 wing parts, and I'm fairly confident that they're built for a good re-entry, since if I ascend properly, or if I descend properly, they don't really get too hot. They all light up, all the gauges are on, but they don't really like heat too far. So I get to the point where I'm starting to get in the thicker atmosphere. We're starting to get a little bit more heat. Not really worried about overheating. All the gauges are looking good, but yeah, I still flip over. My front end, I'm pretty sure that my angle that I was going down was okay. It may not have been perfect, but it was okay. I think the biggest problem I have right now is weight. I think the front of my plane is too light. If you think of it like a dart, right? Like you're throwing darts at a dartboard, you want the weight of the dart at the front. And that makes sense to me. And you want the, I guess, areas for control and friction and drag, I think is the right word we're looking for here. You want that at the back. So I need more drag at the back and more weight at the front. Now I knew this after the first video. I knew I needed more drag at the back. I was hoping I had more weight at the front already, or I had enough weight at the front, but I knew I needed more drag at the back. So you can notice, maybe you notice, that my wings actually have air brakes on the bottom of the wings, not just the top. That was my attempt to add a lot more drag to the back of the plane. Turns out it just wasn't enough. I need more weight at the front. So I'm gonna have to figure out a solution to that. Here's my frame rate, pretty much real time. As you can see, it's still pretty bad. I don't know why, it just is. I think this right here was probably because KSP was on for a long time and it was just starting to run sluggish. So we hit the ground safely. It's under 5 meters per second, but I have another problem. The parachutes release me and let the back end drop too hard, and I lose all of the engines, which is like the most expensive part. Financial problems. We have a lot of things to look at, and I have a lot of things to try and address. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, give me a like. If you think this is a cool series and you want to keep watching and you want updates when new videos are available, make sure you subscribe. I'm hoping that I have better videos, faster pace in the future, but honestly, my work schedule is really not allowing that right now. So sorry about the delays in the video releases. I hope I can do better in the future, I guess. It's going to be a bit until the next one. Sorry, it's just the way it is. Real life stuff gets in the way of the non-real life stuff. But it is what it is, guys. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Bye.